Welcome back, everyone, to R2Kast number 39. Today, we have one of those people that has really done it all. And I know Kate will be off camera going, that's not the case, because she's modest to get out. But we have a story. It's not a very linear story. We go around just about every profession in the industry. But Kate, would you like to say hello?
Hello. Thank you very much for having me. I'm really, really excited.
Before we get on into another excellent episode of the R2Kast, I would just like to thank the sponsor for the show today, The Scottish Farmer, a weekly magazine highlighting everything you need to know regarding the Scottish agricultural industry, whether it's breaking news, events happening in the sector, market reports, classified ads, or just wholesome stories happening in the industry. The Scottish Farmer's got it for you.
Oh, absolute pleasure, absolute pleasure. Kate has been to Belgium and London like the last 4 days or something like that. I have went from Dumfries to outside Dumfries, so I'm feeling like quite well travelled myself. But you'll notice Kate was wearing a QMS hat. Now, if I've moved high enough up, if you speak, Kate, then they'll see it because it like goes to who's speaking.
All right, okay. So hello. Here's my hat, and it looks to me as if it's back to front, but I don't know if that happens.
No, it's not. It's the perfect way around. It's
right.
Scottish beef, unless I'm reading something different. And also, I wanted to join in. For those of you that have followed me sort of away from the podcast, sort of on Facebook, Instagram and stuff, I've been lucky enough to sort of work alongside QMS for some promotion of sort of Scottish produce with a focus for us on lamb, but also talking about beef and specially selected pork. And with my Masters in Food Security, I talked a wee bit about sourcing sustainable products, such as local products in the form of Scotch. So that was a pleasure. So with that, I have picked up some merch over the years. So I thought I'd just give you a wee twirl. So I have my Scotch Lamb apron, you know, fancy. And then I have my Scotch Lamb t-shirt. And I think I've actually got a pink Scottish beef apron, which I have worn around the college before and been laughed at because pink, I think, suits me great. A couple of white t-shirts and stuff. So I could really sort of do that thing where you put on like 40 t-shirts. But I know you guys are not here to listen to me talk about my wardrobe because that would be a horrible discussion. We're here to listen to Kate's story. And Kate's story, as I have told you, is a very interesting one. So, Kate, could you give us a bit of background about yourself? Were you from farming, first off?
I can indeed. I'm going to take this hat off first because it's a bit hot in here. So, yes. So I am on a farm currently in Peeblesshire. I've been here all my life. Grew up here. It's my family farm, and I'm fifth generation. So my family have been on the estate. We're tenant farmers. They've been on the estate for over 150 years. So I have quite deep roots in both farming and in the local area. So currently I'm farming here with my husband, and we have 4 kids who sometimes help if they're bribed into it, and most of the time don't.
Do any of them have any interest, do you think, future-wise? What age are they? Kate, are they?
Yeah, they're all a bit older now. So oldest is Alex. She's 22. She's got a law degree. No interest at all. Youngest is Michael. He's in 6th year at school. No interest at all. But we've got twin boys in the middle who are currently at university, not doing agriculture, but they might be interested. They're much more interested than the other 2. And actually, David gladdened my heart the other day because he said to me, you know, Mum, I think I'd quite like to be a farmer. So that, you know, we've never ever pushed them into it at all. It's got to be their decision, but it was quite nice to hear that. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, there won't be many 6th generation farmers out there, and that's what that would be. Now, just to give you a bit of hope, I would say just about zero interest in farming till I was about 16. So yeah, you still got hope there.
Yes, I think it's quite easy to see early on if they're not interested. So you could tell when Alex and Michael were both tiny that there was no way they were going to be interested. But yeah, it's got to develop by itself. There's no point in pushing it.
And you have made the news lately for your farming practices, and you actually did tell me this yourself when we bumped into each other in Peebles. A wee tuck mistake that I can say we had the sort of opposite issue, but do you want to tell us a bit about that?
which tup mistakes that you want.
Well,
because we've got two tup mistakes. We've got two tup mistakes this year. We've got a tup mistake which was our own fault, which was with the field sheep. There was tups in with them in the summer longer than there should have been, so we had some early lambs in January. And then when the scanner came, he said that some of the hill sheep were early, because obviously one of next door's tups was out on the hill. Definitely wasn't one of ours. And so we're just basically lambing from about Hogmanay till the end of June, I think. We've not really, this year, we've not got set lambing periods. So we've got hill sheep lambing now. The park sheep don't start properly until the 7th of April, but we've already got some of them. And then the main bulk of hill sheep will start at the end of April. So yeah, it's not something to be proud of.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it up because it was quite funny, and I did see it popped up in the Farmer's Guardian somehow, and I thought a bit of a giggle for that one. But must love the job if you want to lamb for 6 months. That's a credit to yourself.
Yes,
so,
well, I do love lambing, but I love it when it finishes as well. So I'll be looking forward to that day.
No, there's a certain novelty to lambing for sure. But you mentioned hill and park sheep. What is it you're running?
So the farm's about 750 hectares. So we've got suckler cows and sheep. So we've got about 450 park cows, grey faces. We put them all to the Meatlink, which we really like using. We've had some really good grades, and we get really consistent lambs from the Meatlink. We've got about 350 black ewes on the hill, which we have been for the past few years crossing out with the Cheviot, which is how I know that it's not our tup that was out on the hill, because these are black ewe lambs that are coming. We're next door to Glenrath, so they might be from an expensive tup. You never know. Go.
Every cloud.
So we have been crossing them out with the Cheviot, and the gimmers go to a blue-faced Leicester, and we've got about 80 or so suckler cows, which we've got 3 bulls at the minute. We've got a shorthorn, a ling, and a simmy, and we've always had Charlies. We've not got a Charlie at the minute, but we're kind of looking maybe to get another Charlie, so we'll see how that goes.
All right, good stuff. And Meatlink, interesting one. Could you tell us a bit about the Meatlink? It's not the common terminal sire you're looking at.
No, it's a one of these composite breeds. It's been around quite a while, I think. There's only a couple of breeders in Scotland have them, but it's all done on figures. They sell straight off the farm. You pay a set price for them. You don't go to Kelso or anything like that. We've got a couple to try them alongside the Texels and the Suffolks that we had, and we were just so pleased with them that every time we needed to replace tups, we just got more Meatlinks. So now that's all we've got. What doesn't work is we used to sometimes keep Texel cross or Suffolk cross yow lambs from our own breeding. Doesn't work with Meatlink. They're definitely a terminal sire, nothing else. You can't and last to sell at the end of the year, and now we get everything finished and away, and 97% of them are off grass. You hardly have to do anything else with them.
Excellent. Very good. And you jumped out just as you said what they were. Are you selling them fat?
Yes. So we sell them fat. Yeah.
Excellent. Good. Is the Meatlink's got a fair chunk of Charlie in it? Is that right, or am I?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, they look a bit like it, don't they?
Yeah, and they've got one of these down breeds in them as well, because some of them have got wool on the top of their heads and things. Not all of them, but I think there's about 4 different breeds in them. But I'm quite big. I'm quite scientific-y. I've got a scientific head, and I like figures.
So when you're saying figures, are you talking EBVs or are you talking?
Yeah, EBVs. Yeah. So we had an interesting experience quite a few years ago. Ed and I, my husband and I, he likes looking at things and buying them and what they look like, and I like figures. So before we got the Meatlinks, we went to Kelso and we were going to buy a tup each, and I decided to buy it off figures, and he bought what he liked the look of, and we were going to have a a competition. We had them raddled, and we were going to see what the lambs were like and everything. He paid 750 for his. I paid 250 for mine. His died before we even started lambing, dropped down dead. We had mine for 5 or 6 years, and we were going to weigh the lambs and just, it was a bet, really, to see who could do best. The trouble was, we had them all marked and everything, and then they all got blooming nematovirus, which totally destroyed the whole experiment. But I always say I won because mine was cheaper and because it lasted like years and his didn't. So
you've got a lot of mileage out of this, haven't you? This isn't the first time you've told that story.
That was about 12 years ago. I tell it every few weeks.
It's like, oh god, here we go again. Yeah, no, but 250 is nothing. I mean, that's a crazy price.
Well, yeah, it was. It wasn't. I don't think it was a very good year, but it's Kelso. But yeah, 250 was quite a bargain, and they lasted for 5 or 6 years. So. And
what figure? Well, yeah, you definitely did win. I think it would be fair to say. What figures are you looking for in particular? Do you have a specific, like a lamines or a growth, or what are you looking for?
Well, it started off looking at growth, but now, to be quite honest, we've got such a good relationship with the Meatlink breeder that he knows what we want, and he just gives us the one that he knows is going to suit us best. Yeah. And they absolutely pop out. You hardly have to touch them at lamb time. They're up on their feet in next to no time, and they're just really, really good.
Brilliant. No, good. I've really focused in on that Meatlink there, but it always interests me when someone goes for a slightly different choice. Like Perry at the Barony there has used Primeras on the Gimmers, and he's getting some really good results now. Lambing only, it's not finished, but happy with the lambs that are coming out at the minute. And like you're saying, they're up before you notice they're born, which is great. Now you're on the farm at the minute, but you certainly left school with veterinary intentions. Was going back to the farm something you always knew would happen, or not?
Yeah, so I was one of those kids who always wanted to be a farmer. I was really, really interested. And I can remember one of my earliest memories is of an old auntie speaking to me and my brother. My brother's 3 years younger than me, so I must have been 5, and he must have been 3. And she completely looked through me and said to him, "Oh, you'll be going to be a farmer when you grow up then." And I can remember thinking, what are you saying that to him for? I'm the one that wants to be a farmer. I didn't play with dolls and things. I had a farmyard and tractors and all that sort of stuff. So I always wanted to do it, but I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder about, am I going to be allowed to, because I'm a girl for a start. My dad's always been really good, but so I remember going to a careers thing at school, because of course when they had the agricultural colleges in, they ushered all the boys in, never ushered the girls in. You won't be interested in hearing from this bloke. That's not what you'll be wanting to do, But I went along anyway, and I spoke to a chap from SRUC or SAC or whatever it was called then. And he really sort of inspired me. I was like, right, I'm going to go to agricultural college for a year, and I'm going to go home and work on the farm. And I came home, I can remember coming home and announcing to my dad that I would be about 15 or 16, that in a few months' time I was going to leave school, I was going to go to agricultural college, I was going to work on the farm. And he said, no, you're not. You're not working here. If you want to do that, that's fine, but you're not coming back here. Not because he didn't want me to come back and work at all, but he didn't want me to do it then. He thought that he'd gone away and worked away, and he wanted me to do the same. So we had quite a bit of lively discussion about that. And eventually, because obviously I was 16 and I knew everything, and I knew exactly how life was going to pan out.
Of course, as all 16-year-olds do.
Well, obviously, yeah, it's all downhill from there, isn't it? And we came to the agreement that if I went away and did something else, and he wasn't caring what I did, that then I could come home and work on the farm. So I kind of thought at that point, well, what's going to be the most useful thing when I'm a farmer? Well, the most useful thing would be to train as a vet if I can do that. So that's what I sort of set my sights on and went and did. And looking back, I'm so glad. If he'd let me leave school at 16 and just come home and not see anything else of life, I would have missed it so much. So I'm so glad he knew what he was talking about. But of course, I didn't think he knew when I was 16.
No, well, that's it.
So
and yeah.
it was always a long-term plan.
Good. Well, and yeah, it sounds like your dad was not just looking out for the best for what he could get from the farm as well, looking for the best for you. But that whole mentality of your auntie and the way the schools put whoever into an agricultural college, it's such an archaic thought. Like it blows my mind when I hear stories like that. And there's so many of them, and they're still there. It's not disappeared. And no, I've ruffled some feathers when I've heard questions and statements like that before in the past. And just I can't go over the stuff that goes on like that. But
it's just exhausting. It's just exhausting. It's not nasty. It's not even meant a lot of the time now. But it's just exhausting. I still get people saying, oh, why isn't your brother here? They would never ever say to my brother, why isn't your sister here? It's just, having to justify it all the time. My brother was never interested. And to be fair, my dad said exactly the same to him. Even if you were interested, you ain't coming straight back home. So.
No, and it must be annoying as a woman, sort of either having to defend that or thinking, I just can't even bother defending it anymore. It infuriates me, to be honest.
It's getting better. It is getting better, but it's just one of them things you get used to.
Yeah, no, 100%. No, it is getting better, of course it is. But I feel like I should also, to the viewers, to the listeners, to yourself, Kate, apologise. I do have a cold. It's not COVID. I say that as if you're going to get it over the podcast. I don't know why I'm saying it's not COVID. Like, oh my God, it's not COVID. But so if I do cough here and there, that's the reason. Where did you go to uni?
So I went to Edinburgh to the Royal Dick, the most aptly named person in the world, Mr. Willie Dick, founded the vet school in Edinburgh, and didn't want to go any further afield. I just wanted to be as close to home as possible because I did come back quite a lot, because I liked living in the city, but I liked coming home again. So yeah, I went to Edinburgh for 5 years. Vets have a very wild reputation. It was quite a wild 5 years. It was fantastic fun, and I can't believe it's 27 years ago that I qualified. Unbelievable.
So it's always bad to look back at how long something is, isn't it? So I had podcast number 32. I had a guy called Kaz Straharchik, who is he's a vet that posts all of his stuff on YouTube. Really interesting guy. Check him out on Farm Vet Films or listen to that podcast. And the whole veterinary thing interests me. And this isn't me saying this because you're my guest and I'm trying to keep you happy. There was 3 things that always stuck out to me as like genius things: vet, lawyer, and like those engineers that make really fancy stuff, like your Elon Musks and stuff like that. That was the 3 things that always stuck out to me. The vet process is so intense. What does that uni degree involve? And do you sort of choose your own pathway? Do you want to do large animal, for example, or how does that work?
No, you have to do everything. So it's one of the most sort of prescriptive, or at least now I'm talking about 27 years ago, and things might have changed a bit, although I don't think a lot. But it's one of the most prescriptive sort of courses you can do. Everybody does every single course. There's no deviation. So we had to learn epidemiology. We had to do public health. So we had to do work in abattoirs, sort of OV work. You had to do small animals, large animals, horses. We got a bit of exotics. We went and worked at the zoo. We did everything. You have to learn how to, so you literally do everything. You have to learn how to interpret x-rays, how to interpret ultrasound, all the things that in human medicine you get a specialist for. You have to learn it all. Now, vets then do go on and specialise, but you have to get the basic understanding of everything. So, for example, I'm not a big fan of horses at all. I never ever wanted to work with horses or anything like that, but you still had to learn absolutely everything that you needed to know about horses. And I've forgotten all of it because I really never used it and wasn't interested enough to keep it in my head. But you did have to learn it all and then pass the exam at the end with everything. So there's no specialisation. And I don't know if there should be. I don't know. I just wonder whether you'd be better with maybe a 4-year general course and then a year specialisation. There's a lack of large animal vet, a lack to do it, and maybe need to try and target some a bit more, because a lot of people start off in mixed practice, but as life goes on and you get kids and your life gets busier and you get more money if you go into small animals, so a lot of people move that way. And it's become a problem, I think. There's not enough large animal vets, especially in sort of more remote areas.
Is that purely down to the fact that not every, but most pets, I almost said most vets, most pets will be insured, whereas not all large animals will be? Is that what that's down to? Or why is there so much money in that game?
That will have made it more so, but I mean, when I qualified, there wasn't an awful lot of pet insurance, but there was still far more money in small animals than large. But maybe the gap has widened because of that sort of thing. A lot of, I don't know, sometimes I think the profession's gone the wrong way. They're trying to do things that cost a lot of money that aren't necessarily in the best interest of the animal. You know, sometimes the kindest thing you can do is just say to owners, look, that you need to call it a day. And it's not what they want to hear, but sometimes it's the best thing for the animal. And I think there's a bit of a lack of that just now. They keep trying to do, we can do kidney transplants in cats, so therefore we should do kidney transplants in cats. But is that really the best thing for a 16-year-old cat? It's just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. So yeah, I've not been in practiced in the profession for quite a long time. And from looking in from the outside now, I do wonder if it's lost its way a little bit.
Well, I actually think that's quite refreshing to hear, because I very rarely watch TV, but my ex's family watched, oh God, I forgot his name. The guy's called Noel.
The super vet.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, yeah. Now, crazy stuff. Don't think I'm in any way taking away from that ability. It's insane. But I feel like sometimes people just have this idea that quantity of life is always better than quality of life, which it very rarely is when it's at that decision stage. Now, maybe I'm too much on the side of this animal suffering, let's put it down. And there's obviously there's no correct answer in that spectrum, but I feel like you're right. It's too often, can we do this to say we've done this? And quite often what happens is you do this massive thing, it costs you however much money, probably puts the animal through a lot of stress and unrequired stuff when you could just give it an injection, and then 2 months later it's dead anyway. I'm not questioning vets at all here, because the ability of some of these people is crazy. Well, you are one. But yeah, I think that's quite nice to hear that this idea I've had isn't just craziness. So no,
and you can't explain to them either. If your mum and dad or you have got cancer, you can understand why you're going through the pain and the and feeling sick and all the awfulness of the treatment. You can understand it. You can't explain that to an animal, and yes, if it's very likely to be a good outcome, then absolutely we should do all we can. But yeah, prolonging it for the owner rather than for the animal is the wrong thing to do. Definitely.
Can you, as a vet, offer guidance? Can you say, I think this is the correct thing to do, or are you not allowed to do that?
You can certainly do that. You can give them your opinion. But what I learned, and this was with experience, not something they taught you at uni. I learned that owners had to come to that realization themselves, and you could sort of explain what to look out for, because people would say, oh, they bring in a dog that was maybe old and a bit doddery, and they say, oh, I'm worried he's suffering. And well, is he still eating? Yes, he is. Is he still happy to see you? Yes, he is. He's fine. You'll know. And they do know. They do know when it gets to that point. And you sometimes have to sort of gently nudge them that way. Yeah. But if you go in and say, look, this dog is, this needs to stop, they won't take that. They have to come to that realization themselves, and your job is to help them get to that realization. and then you know, do it in the nicest possible way, and in the, you know, in their own home if you can, or whatever.
I think that's really good. I mean, that's as natural as it gets, isn't it? I mean, it's I think no matter what the intention, no matter if it's 100% natural and wholly pure, as good an intention as you can give someone, it's hard to be told that. I mean, you have to go back and think about that. And I think that's a pretty good way to look at that. Just, you said 27 years ago, which would mean 95, which would mean you would be a vet around the time of Foot and Mouth. What was that like?
Oh yes. So when I qualified, I decided, well, I was looking in the vet records. At that point, I'd realised that one of the reasons Dad didn't want me to come straight back home, because there isn't really enough, you know, work for everybody. Mm-hmm. He was still in his sort of mid to late 50s, and he was quite happy doing his thing. And so I went off to get a job. So looking in the vet record, and there was where all the jobs were at that point, there was an advert there, and it was a mixed practice in County Durham, and it had a Land Rover. You got Land Rover with it. And it was a Land Rover that drew me in. I had no idea where County Durham was. I thought it was probably in Ireland because it began with county. You know,
everyone says that. Everyone says that.
No idea where it was. Anyway, I got the map out because, of course, no Google Maps, and I phoned up the number, and this woman, Dianna, answered the phone. Honestly, absolutely wonderful woman, but my God, eccentric doesn't describe it. So, as I was speaking to her on the phone, the first conversation we had, we were just chatting away, and she just said, "Oh, and have you got a boyfriend?" And I said, "No, not at the minute, no." "Oh, well, that's probably for the best, you know. My husband just died last year, and they're just a pain in the neck, aren't they?" Oh, right, okay. I'm sorry to hear that. "Oh yes, he was a blooming alcoholic and a womanizer, but you know, you sometimes miss fuckers, don't you?" Like, this is an unusual lady. So I went for an interview, got lost on the way. Again, no sat nav, no Google Maps, got lost. I was about an hour late for the interview, but she'd totally forgotten that she'd actually booked me in for an interview. So she came along another 2 hours after that. And you know, vet interviews are not interviews. You just sit and have a chat, really. And then she took me out on some calls, and we got on like a house on fire. And she said, "Do you want to come back for tea to mine?" So we're driving up the Dale. So a place called Weardale. The weird bit is right. But it was like James Herriot, really. It was that sort of place, quite old fashioned. And we're driving up Weardale to go to her house for tea, and she's pointing out farms. "Oh, that's Rose Hill. We've got really good clients there, and that lady that lives in that house has got a lovely dog that we treat, and that's my dead husband's ex-mistress's house, and that's yeah. It's quite eccentric, quite a character, great fun. So by the end of tea, I had a job, and it was just me and her. It was just a two women practice, and I went down there to work. My plan was to go for about 6 or 8 months and make a start, and I stayed for nearly 8 years.
Which would take you to what, 2003?
Yes,
Yeah.
So Foot and Mouth was hideous. I think it was the sixth case in the country was one of our clients. So we were in right at the start, and there were people getting taken out all round about. It was just awful. It was absolutely awful. You can't describe it. You know, these people are your friends. It was a really, really, you were the vet in the area. You knew everybody, and they, you know, I knew them, they knew me. They were pals. You were socialising with them and everything. And then they're phoning up saying, "I've just had the ministry here. They're coming tomorrow to take everything out." And I was at a couple of the killings on the farms, the wiping outs. It was just awful. And about 2 or 3 months in, they were desperate for vets. Absolutely desperate for vets. They were taking in final year students and everything. And Dianna went off to work as a ministry vet, and I was left running the practice by myself. She was away about 3 months, I think. So I was on call sort of the entire time and doing all our work. And it was a bit like COVID at the start. You didn't really know what you could and couldn't do, you know. I remember I was out on a farm one morning seeing something, I can't even remember what it was, mastitis or something, who knows. And I got back to the surgery, and about 2 or 3 hours later, the farmer phoned up, I've just found some sheep and they're really lame and they've got lesions on their feet. I was all right. And he says, I'll have to get the ministry. So I didn't dare leave the practice at that point, you know. Have you touched something? Are you spreading it? Well, you know. So then he phoned back, yeah, the ministry vet's been out, it's been confirmed it's foot and mouth. So Ed had his own sheep. So can I go home? You know, can I go near him? So he actually got our daughter, who was only a year or so old at the time, went down to his mum's so that I could go home. And we spent the whole weekend apart just in case I had any. Just like COVID was at the start, where you didn't really know how it worked. And the other time I really remember was Dianna. It was her practice. She wrote the checks, and you know there was nobody else to sign the checks. So I remember one morning meeting her about 5 o'clock in the morning because we were scared that somebody would see us together because she was out, you know, on these slaughters. We met away up on the fell top in a car park. She parked at one end, and I parked at the other, and I walked halfway across and put the checkbook on the ground and walked back to my car. She walked over to the checkbook and signed it and walked back so that we went, you know, it just, when you look back, you just think, God, it was just really weird. But everybody just didn't want to take any chances, you know.
And rightly so, when you're seeing your neighbours' whole flocks getting culled, you know, like, I mean, your jobs went from being a vet to being a Samaritan going round consoling people as well. It's not just the animals at that stage. But also, Kate, probably an important question. I mean, it's February 2001 and August 2007. Is that right? No. Yes. Is that right? Yeah.
That's right.
So, God, what age would I have been? 4. So I don't really remember much. I remember specifically sitting right below the TV, because you always sit too close to the TV whilst you got square eyes, yeah. And Dad put the news on, and I just remember this, oh fuck, Laura, come through. I think that's the first time I ever said the F word in the podcast, but I remember that vividly. Probably one of the first memories I have, really, like vivid memories. And I'm like, what? It's just cows. Like, I didn't, because you can't comprehend, yeah. That was the sort of first idea, and a lot of my viewers are much younger than I am. Will be born after 2001. Could you tell us a bit about why it was such a big deal? Also, what foot and mouth is? It's probably quite important, and we know it attacks the feet and the mouth, the mouth. Yeah. But yeah, just sort of tell us about what it is, why it was such a big deal, and how culling. How was it done as well?
Right, God, this is dredging the memory bank. So it's a viral disease, and it's really, really contagious. And like COVID, there are different kind of strains, and some of them are really, they're really pathogenic and they kill animals. A lot of other ones are they just decrease production. But the way that they have to stop it, because they didn't have a vaccine, there's no treatment, because it's so contagious, was to kill things round about so that it couldn't spread. I mean, that's basically what it was. And the feeling at the start, and there was a feeling at the start of COVID, which, when we didn't know what was happening, it was just like there was doom. I don't know if everybody else felt like that, but you just had this feeling of impending doom. It feels a wee bit like that with the Ukraine thing at the minute, but not, you know, but really at the start of COVID, there was this feeling of doom. Well, foot and mouth was the same. And it was first found in an abattoir in Essex by one of my classmates, actually, who I was at college with in Edinburgh, who was doing OV work, and he identified it. And how on earth Craig ever managed to work out that's what it was, because once it all started, I look back at my notes, and what I had written down under foot and mouth disease in my notes from lectures was, foot and mouth disease hasn't been seen since the 60s. If you see it, call the police.
So not much then.
That's what I had. You know, if you see it, call the police. Stay on the farm, call the police. I had a friend who was a police officer at the time, and I said to her, what would you have done if I'd called you? I wouldn't have had a bloody clue, But it was, so you're saying it probably doesn't mean anything to your listeners. That's how we were. It didn't mean anything to us either, So it was just completely out the blue. And it was something that had happened to your grandfather, not something that had happened to you. And then they just shut the whole countryside down. It was, again, a bit like COVID. Everything was just shut down because it was a sort of, right, just stop doing anything and we'll try and stop it spreading. There was a day, we had a little dairy farm, and one of our clients, a little dairy farmer, they had a ministry person parked at the end of his road in a caravan with disinfectant, who was spraying the wheels of the milk tanker every single day. He lived in that caravan for months. I presume they subbed in and out. I don't know. But anyway, his job was to spray the wheels of any motor that was going in, because the milk tanker was going in and out. You didn't want anybody else going in and out in case you spread it. And actually, looking back, it was over the top, but in the same way that kind of our first lockdown was probably over the top a little bit. It was just because it was so scary and so unknown, and nobody really knew what to do. I was only at a couple of the farms that were taken out, but it was just horrible. The biggest one I was at, it had about 1,000 store lambs, and you couldn't move them. They were there, and you just couldn't move them. This must have been a bit later on. It finished quicker in Scotland because they took more decisive action. In England, it sort of lingered on. So this would be a bit later, and there was obviously not going to be any market for them, and you couldn't move them. If you moved anything, you had to get a license from the ministry, and it came out the fax machine. You probably don't even know what a fax machine is.
No, I do.
Printed out these. I remember sitting for hours waiting for all these licenses to come out, as if a bit of paper could stop it spreading. It's just, and yeah, all these store lambs just had to be shot, and I wasn't doing it, but they needed a vet there to oversee it. So they had big tipper wagons in, and the slaughtermen were just bang, 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 get a pen of 20 or 30, bang, 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 bang. Then the forklift came in, scooped them up, tipped them in the trailer, another 30, bang, bang. It was horrible, absolutely horrible.
That stuff waits with you. Like, I mean, you're there as the vet, Kate, and that must have been harrowing for yourself, but being the person that, and it's not the farmer's fault, but we all do it, we take the blame. And
I mean, sheep are bad enough, but you probably, most people don't have that much of attachment to sheep, but Dianna was at quite a few places where it was, dairy herds and things, and older farmers who knew, it was quite an old-fashioned place. It was quite a lot of farmers would only have 20 or 30 cows. They were probably they were probably all in their teens. They knew them all. It was absolutely soul destroying for a lot of people. Absolutely, yeah.
And those of you listening to this will be hearing it in May or April or whatever. We'd actually filmed this on the 23rd of March, which is the 2-year anniversary of the COVID thing. And I mean, it was, you say maybe an overreaction, maybe, but also, and I'm very much a can't wait to get out of COVID person. I can't wait to get rid of masks. I openly talk about that. Everyone's opinion, absolutely. But on the day that happened, we were all scared. I don't think there's many people out there that wasn't. I mean, even though I wasn't scared of the disease, I was scared of the fact it was such a big deal. And that all happens. And when you're seeing, like we were, deaths flying up, when you're seeing the burning piles of stock, it's hard to not let it get to you. And that actually leads me to my next question. And some people, I've asked this question to folk, and quite a lot of folk have laughed at me, and you might as well, but just in my head, if you burn something, can that not just go in the wind with the smoke? Like, I've never understood how that kills it. Does it just kill it on the animal and that's it done, or how does that work?
There was, so Towlaw, there was a big funeral pyre at Towlaw where they took a lot of these dead things, which would be about 4 or 5 miles away from us, and you could see the smoke. And if you drove up past it, not that we were out and about if we could help it, but if you went past it, you could see it. And there were a lot of farms who insisted that they had got it from the smoke because it was going, the wind had been blowing that way 2 or 3 days before they got it. So I don't know. I mean, the science would probably say that burning should destroy the virus, but then there's always little bits of things in smoke as well. So I don't know, nothing. I don't think anything like that was ever proved, but there was a lot of farmers and absolutely insisted that that's how they'd got it, because they'd been, we were all shut down. Every single farm, the postman wasn't coming up the road. There was big signs at the bottom of the road saying, "Do not enter." Nobody was allowed to come in. So everybody was being really, really careful like that, and yet you were still getting it. So Yeah,
there's reasons to believe it. Now, I also get why folk hear people say that, and I've said it ever since I was a 5-year-old kid. It doesn't make sense. The shooting thing is mad. That I genuinely didn't know how the call happened, if it was shooting, if it was what. No, not a nice experience. We've sat and talked about that for 10 minutes. We should maybe move on to something a bit more positive. But I really wanted to ask about that because, when you look back from an animal health perspective, certainly in my lifetime, born essentially 97, the only thing that really jumped, you've got things like Schmallenberg and that were scares, 100%, and not just scares, they hit the industry. But foot and mouth really is the one that sort of stands out.
Yeah. The only thing like it is COVID. It's the only thing that I can, sort of relate that is anything like it. But COVID was everybody, whereas foot and mouth was country people.
Which maybe made it harder because a lot of people wouldn't even be able to empathise where you were. They couldn't.
Well, and they were told right at the start to stay out of the countryside. The countryside is shut. We don't want you here, sort of thing. So they were sort of removed from it completely as well. So it actually destroyed quite a lot of rural businesses because people were staying in the towns.
Never thought of that. Did it, just one final question, because I do seem to remember, so I'm really focused on this, I'm really enjoying it. It feels wrong, you know what I mean. I seem to remember Mum and Dad talking about they had lambs going away. Now at that time of year, I'm guessing it would have been the sort of fat ones that are just the stragglers that go away as fat. We don't rear fat, we rear store, but the ones that you sort of keep on, I'm guessing. And they were about to go on the lorry and the driver got a call and they decided not to put them in the lorry or something like that. But did it hit Scotland or did it not? Did it get into Scotland? It did,
yes,
right.
it did. Yeah, the south of Scotland, the Dumfries area got it quite bad. But what they persuaded, I think it was NFU and others working together, persuaded them that if they did a 10-mile cull round about the infected, I think it was 10 mile, round the infected farms, that could stop it in its tracks. And it was, if I remember rightly, and I wasn't in Scotland, so it was only sort of hearsay, but there was a lot of people were not happy with that because you were actually taking out healthy flocks and herds that, you were saying, right, you're going to have to give up what you've done, even though you've not got it, to save everybody else. And there was a lot of controversy about it, but it did work. It did work.
Yeah, that's a tough pill that needs to be swallowed, that, isn't it? That's a and I said one more question, but I promise this is the last one. Was there compensation for people that had it, or was there maybe compensation for those that didn't have it, like you're saying there, that still had to be culled, or no?
There was compensation because some of the people who won out of it, and I'm not saying that they were happy about winning out of it because they weren't, but the valuers were really, really busy. But if I remember rightly, it again, that was very sort of variable. They weren't paying tens of thousands of pounds for really good stock, if I remember rightly. So some people won and some people lost out of it. But yeah, you did get compensation, but there was the diagnostics were really poor. So it was literally somebody turns up on your farm, looks at your animals and says, yes, you've got it, or no, you haven't. There was no blood sampling or skin swabbing or anything like that. And there were final year vet students sent out to do this, and they had to make this decision. And not only the actual farm, so we had one client, a very big farmer, who had, I think, 6 or 7 neighbours that marched him all the way around about. And a vet had to go out because he had some sheep that were lame. The vet had to go out and they had to say on the spot, is this foot and mouth? If it is, not only are we taking out you, but we're taking out all those 7 farmers as well, because there were contiguous contacts. And that was a really, really hard thing for any vet to do, let alone a final year vet student who hadn't even qualified.
That's enough to put a final year student off the profession for life, you would think. I mean, that's a horrible kick-off. But we will leave foot and mouth. I do apologize. It's very interesting. It's one of the biggest topics in the recent agricultural history.
Yeah.
So,
I hope you've kicked your feet up and got comfy and enjoying another fantastic episode of the R2Kast with another really interesting guest. I would just like to quickly take another second to plug the sponsors of the show today, the Scottish Farmer, and I would strongly advise you to go out and pick one up this week and see even more of the fantastic people that are in our industry.
Now, I've just realised at the start, I showed my fancy apron, my fancy t-shirt, your fancy hat, and didn't mention you have anything to do with QMS, so that's probably going to look very weird. I'm going to go into QMS. I do have one other thing to speak about first, though, Kate. It's how I met you. I was invited along with Cammy Wilson and Claire Taylor, very much rubbing shoulders with the stars I was, to the Peeblesshire Agricultural Society, sort of a discussion society looking at, agricultural topics, obviously. You're involved in that. Could you tell us about that and how long's that been going around and what sort of discussions you get going?
So that's Peeblesshire Agricultural Society is the main body, and we organise People's Show, and the Discussion Society is a sort of subgroup of that. So I've been on the show committee for about 15 years, and I was president of it in 15-16. So I was the first female president of People's Agricultural Society, which I've always been very proud of. I can remember being 10 and watching my dad as the president walk around the ring and thinking, I'm going to do that someday. And I did, so I was very proud of that. And then after you've done that and you're sort of a has-been, you kind of get coerced into doing the Discussion Society. So the Discussion Society, I don't know how long it's been going on for. The Show Society is at least 150-year-old. I don't know how long the Discussion Society has been going alongside it. It's been going as long as I can remember. And we meet through the winter and get interesting people to come along and talk, and local farmers sometimes people from further afield, and just try and have a bit chat. So it's always quite well attended. It would be nice to get some of the younger ones coming along. They do come along, but there's a lot of older stalwarts who come to everything, whereas the younger ones only come if you get really good people like you and Cammy and Claire.
Well, it's just it comes with the territory of being someone like myself. No, I'm joking. I honestly thought it was great. I mean, I do a podcast of almost 50 guests on it. People work in the media. We go to the pub. We have a chat about farming. It's sad actually. We live the life of farming and we still go home and talk about it. We have no lives. It's kind of how us farming types do. I'm taking a 3-week holiday from work as of tomorrow to go home and lamb, which is quite sad, but it's what we do. But I love it. I thought it was great to sort of have this society based around just chatting about it and more than chatting, sort of actually discussing what things mean and stuff. Our thing was for you guys listening, was sort of looking at connecting with the consumer and whatever method that might be. Now, Claire Taylor now with Jane Craigie Marketing. If you watch number 18 podcast, Claire's been on. She was with the Scottish Farmer, so looking at articles and sort of being the voice of the farmer for the most part to the farming population, but also fighting the corner of the farmer. Cammy, just massive on YouTube, number 7 on the podcast. If you want to check it out, and then this guy that wears green t-shirts on podcasts. But I thought it was great to sort of get folk together and really have that discussion. So I just wanted to ask about that quickly. And
there's discussion societies all over the place, and a lot of them are way older than us. So if you ever get asked to, I think it's TV at Dale and Hoyt, because I've spoken there, it's way more formal than us. They all have suits and they all stand up and ask a proper formal question, which is a different sort of experience. It's equally as good, but not nearly as informal as our one.
You've just answered your own question. If it's formal, I'm not going to invite. I'm 1 and 8 for it at the start of this, Kate. Remember, there's sort of levels to this. But yeah, no, I know they go along. I just never they go. They're everywhere. I just never been involved in one. It was good to see. QMS. We talked about QMS. I am not going to butcher the description of QMS. Could you tell us what QMS is? What your role in QMS is as well?
So QMS is Quality Meat Scotland, and they are the levy body for Scotland. So what that means is that every single pig, sheep and cow is slaughtered in Scotland, there's a levy paid on it, and part of that's paid by the farmer and part of that's paid by the processor. And all that money, which is, I think with sheep it's about 80 pence, with cattle it's round about £4 a head. Not a lot of money, probably not a lot of money for each farm. You know, I think here at home, you know, our levy spend is probably 500-600 a year, something like that. You know, we produce store calves, so it's not huge. We couldn't do very much with that individually for sort of promotion and marketing. But when you take everybody, all the farmers in Scotland, and put all that money together into one pot, you can actually do far more with it and get far more bang for your buck. So Quality Meat Scotland was formed by a statutory instrument of through the Scottish Government in 2008, and that means that this levy is compulsory. You have to pay it, and it means that we get that money and we do the best we can with it. And the four sort of pillars of what we do are to promote the industry, to support the industry, to develop the industry, and to protect it. So that's what we kind of spend that levy money on. And I mean, like I say, the whole point of it is that as individuals, we probably couldn't do that much with it, but when we all work together and collaborate and use all that money in one big pot, we can do far more.
How does what's the word for having to do it? That's embarrassing. Doesn't matter. Thank you. How does a levy like that come about? So that only started in 2008, did you say there?
No, well, QMS was only brought into being, well, now that's not actually true, because it was around beforehand, but it didn't have the same sort of status. I'm not really very sure exactly when it started. It was before that, and I presume it would be forward-looking farmers. It would be voluntary to start off with, and it would be forward-looking farmers, and I presume that I've got something about BSE in my head. So maybe it was round about then that they all decided that it would be a good idea. So in the mid-90s or something. I should really know this, shouldn't I? I'm sorry, I've never looked any further back than 2008. But yeah, it would be forward-looking farmers that would realise that this was the best way to go, and there would be enough eventually together that they would be saying, well, we're doing this marketing, but it's benefiting the people who've not paid the money as well. So we need to make sure that everybody contributes. I presume that's how it came about.
And pardon my ignorance here, but as forward-looking farmers, are you just talking about farmers that look forward, or is that a movement? That is, yeah, you're
just farmers who could see where things were going with consumers and marketing, and decided that was the way of the future. Because the other thing we do, and this is separate from being the levy body, so that's one thing. But the other thing that QMS do is they run the quality assurance schemes. Now, we're quite unique because in England, there's two different bodies who do that. AHDB are the levy body, and Red Tractor run the assurance schemes, and they're different things. In Scotland, QMS do it all, and that's because we have a PGI brand. If you stand up again, you'll see your PGI little label on your T-shirt. Oh, so it's on your T-shirt, yeah. The yellow bit, that's the PGI. That's the Protected Geographical Indicator, and we have that for Scotch beef and Scotch lamb. And that means that you can't use the words Scotch beef and Scotch lamb if you don't take part in the quality assurance schemes that all feed into that. You know, so you couldn't sell a steak from, you know, Lancashire and say this is Scotch beef if it happened to be an Aberdeen Angus, or if your grandfather was Scottish or whatever. It actually has to have gone through the whole quality assurance process. It has to have been born, reared, and then slaughtered in Scotland for it to be able to have that label on it. And Scotch beef, we managed to get that because Scotch beef as a sort of phrase has been known, it's been around for hundreds of years. People all over Britain have recognised that Scotch is the best for quite a long time, and again, the people who were doing this long before I was ever involved recognised that, and they managed to get it accepted as a PGI, and that's a really powerful thing, because I think there's only a handful in Scotland. I think Storing Away Black Pudding is one.
Smokies, is that one? Is that a PGI?
I think they possibly are, but they're very few and far between, and there's very few which are whole countries. So it's really quite a unique thing,
So does that mean there's sort of 4 things they have to meet? They have to be born, reared, slaughtered, and also have to be associated with assurance. You can't just have those 3. You also need to be.
So it has to. The animal has to be born and raised on a quality assured QMS quality assured farm. So that's what the assurance inspections that we all undertake every year. If you're an assured farm, then that's the first part of the chain. Every time it moves, it has to be moved by a quality assured haulier. So all the hauliers have to have a scheme as well, and that's to show that proves to consumers who were actually talking to the end of the day that they are also doing everything right. They're all following all the rules, and they can be absolutely assured that they're doing the right thing. They have to be fed on quality assured feed if you're buying any feed in. So there's a feed scheme. They go through an auction market. That auction market has to be quality assured, and the processor at the end of the day has to be quality assured and has to be in Scotland as well. So as a consumer, and this is what we track. This is the core of our job, is to try and get this across to consumers. That if you want to be the only way you can be absolutely assured that the meat you're eating is Scottish through and through and has been checked all the way through the process, and you can be completely assured that the animal welfare has been good and all that sort of stuff, is to look for that rosette with the Scottish beef or the Scottish lamb, or the specially selected pork. Specially selected pork is slightly different. It's not a PGI, it's a brand, because to get a PGI, you've got to prove that your product is different from other people's. And I think they got it in the first place because our vegetation is different, our climate is different for cattle and sheep. So it will taste different from other places. But the pig thing, they couldn't ever sort of say, well, pigs in Scotland are going to be different from pigs elsewhere. So we do. Yeah. So we do market pork, but it's under the specially selected pork brand rather than a PGI. But again, it's all quality assured as well, so you can know that every step of the way that it's been farm assured. So that's what that rosette means. It means that it's never, and if it goes out, if any of those links are missing, if a store calf goes onto a farm that isn't farm assured, that's it. It can never come back into the scheme. It has to be like that the whole way through, and it can be guaranteed.
And do you guys do work alongside, like, this is terrible, the cereal assurance scheme, Scottish quality cereals? What is the milk one? Do you guys work alongside these, or is it?
Yeah, so Red Tractor do dairy in Scotland.
Oh, okay.
And SQC do crops. And yeah, I mean, we absolutely recognise, and as a farmer myself, I don't want somebody coming on every week looking at things. It's bad enough when the ministry guy wants to do a sheep inspection or whatever. You don't want all these different things. So we do work together with them, so that if we've got an assessor going out on a farm, if that farm is also SQC assured, they can do that bit at the same time. Or if it's a dairy that's got more than one thing, we can work together so that the assessor can do everything at the same time. Hopefully, that's the plan. It doesn't always work, everybody's human, and sometimes these things don't match up. But that's definitely the aim, is to get one person out and do everything and tick all those boxes. So yeah, we work really closely with them.
And to be honest, when you started talking about the levy side, I was a bit confused. I wasn't actually fully aware of the levy side. The quality assurance, obviously, that's sort of been the stuff I've worked alongside you guys with. But so, are you doing a similar? This is the levy side I'm focusing on here. Are you doing a similar job to what your Wool Marketing Board do, your Milk Marketing Board would have done, but for meat? Or have I got the wrong side of this?
Kind of, but the Wool Marketing Board buys your wool, so we don't buy any meat or anything. We don't. But yeah, we do. So we do the marketing, and we sort of do export development. So that's why you mentioned before I was in Belgium. I was in Belgium at the weekend there at a big food show where we go across with our stand. Now, we don't have any meat on our stand that's ours. What we're there to do is to try and get leads, to try and get the people who want to buy Scotch to come and speak to us and give us their details, so that we can then introduce them to the processors in Scotland who can supply them. So that's part of our role. And we also do, under the develop pillar, we run, the flagship one is the Monitor Farms programme. And that doesn't actually come out of levy. That is all via KITIF money from Scottish Government. So it's all fully funded by Scottish Government, but we can lever that in because we've got the team that can run things like that, so we can deliver that sort of programme. So that's extra sort of money that comes in that we can then use, and we can match fund some of it with levy to do various things as well.
Now, you're just talking there about Belgium, home to literally the capital city of the EU. What does Brexit mean for QMS's job?
I suppose,
if we know even what Brexit is,
I suppose there are challenges and there are opportunities. So the challenges have been that the actual physical logistical movement of meat has been much more difficult. Big companies, all companies have had an awful lot more paperwork, an awful lot more checks to go through, just an awful lot more hassle. And big companies have got the big abattoirs, they're employing 200-300 people. They've got enough capacity to have a member of staff that's doing that. So that's fine. Most of them are they've worked through it, they're sorted. But the smaller ones who don't necessarily have somebody that can do all that paperwork all the time, we can't do the paperwork for them, but what we can try and do is help them in any way we can to make sure they know where all the best forms are, to hook them up with people that can help them, and just to try and make it as easy as possible. But the biggest problem with Brexit has been that all the groupage stopped. So it used to be that the smaller processors would maybe get together and put lots of different things into a lorry from different suppliers. They'd work together to cut their costs, as you would. But then that kind of all stopped because of the checks and things, and it's just been made an awful lot more difficult. So that's a really big challenge, the sort of logistics of it. The opportunities are that I suppose we're now out on our own, and the government are negotiating these free trade agreements and things. And I know there are a lot of people worried about them, but there could potentially be opportunities there. I was in Belgium. I drew the short straw, but another one of our team was out in the States at the same time, because obviously you've not had a food trade show for 2 years and you're going to have them both at the same time. He got to go out to Las Vegas, where there was a big show called Cial America, and the main reason for sending somebody out there was because America just removed the ban on sheep meat going in just last year. So they've not taken sheep meat from Britain, I think, since foot and mouth. It might even have been BSE, I'm not sure which one, but they've not taken it for a long time. And we've now got access again. So there is a potential there. Americans don't eat a lot of lamb at the minute, but if we can get into some of the sort of high-end places, it might be a really good market for us. So a couple of the team went out there to see if they can get any leads, to see if and they took a processor with them actually, who might be interested in working out, sending stuff out there, just to see if they could get any leads and make any contacts. And the next step after that is, because none of these things happen very quickly, but the next step after that is, if there is anybody interested and they're going, well, maybe Scottish, my great-grandfather was Scottish. Tell you what, if you're maybe going to think about, why don't you come over to Scotland? Why don't you come over and we'll take you to some farms. You can see what the landscape's like. You can go around a processor. You can see everything we do, and you can taste it on home soil. And often that's the best way to actually get the ball rolling, because that gives them then a story to tell when they sell it. Oh, I've been to Scotland, I've seen this. So we call them inward missions, and that's the sort of next step. But none of this export stuff is very quick, and it's a slow burn, and you have to keep working away at it. But there are, there's definitely going to be opportunities there.
Yeah, Americans certainly love beef, so if we could sort of translate it over to lamb and mutton, that would be quite the market.
And the funny thing is, different perceptions in different countries. So before COVID, I was lucky enough to be at one of these food shows in Japan, and it was absolutely fascinating. In Japan, you've got Wagyu, which is your very top, and I don't know if you've seen Wagyu, but it's just
marbled,
like a big lump of fat. Yeah. So their beef is
Wagyu A5 has more fat than meat, does it not? Am I wrong? Is it not something like 60-40?
Yeah, yes. It's you put it in your mouth and you can just feel the fat. I didn't particularly like it, but it's their premium product. But what they told us when we were over there was a growing trend in young, particularly female consumers, to be eating lamb. Lamb's not a big thing in Japan, but they were really going to be eating lamb because they saw it as a lean, healthy meat. So, it's different perceptions. Here, you speak to people often and they'll say, oh, lamb's really fatty. But in Japan, lamb to them was lean and healthy. So it's really important to understand what different cultures think and then target your marketing accordingly.
It's interesting you say that, because when I did my master's, there were 23 people in my master's group, 17 of which were from China. And then in my halls, there was 4 of us. 1 was from Hong Kong, 2 was from China, and myself is not from China. And I basically showed them photos of the sheep, and they're like, oh my God, lambs, that, loved it. And I was like, would you like to taste it? And they were like, don't want to eat the wee lamb. And I'm like, what? As it grows up to that you guys eat meat all the time, this is what the process is. So the next time I was back home, brought some diced lamb back. Oh my God, what a hit this was with Bao Hua and Xiaodan. Like, they were like, we want more. They loved it. It's interesting. I mean, like, they took me and I tried duck, as in the full duck, the feet and everything. Like, it's so interesting to see. I mean, they eat the brain, which I was a wee bit like, not because of the brain sort of looking down the BSE routes. I'm like, oh, not great. But there's certainly no waste. But yeah, it's good to get out there. And also, trade's very important. Sort of building these relationships with other countries is excellent, but also what COVID has done is sort of, I assume, reduced globalization to a point, and Brexit will have minimised it over the last year or so as well. And you guys are promoting a lot of Scotch products in Scotland, which I think is great. I mean, the Field Cred movement. Could you tell us a bit about Field Cred? Yeah,
so we've very recently changed our marketing. We used to market to older people. All the sort of feedback was that younger people weren't interested in it, and we should keep our target audience happy. But as things have moved on, now we use a lot of insight. So we actually get out there and do a lot of asking consumers what their values are, what they think about, and we've really swung our marketing completely. And now we're mainly targeting 18 to 39-year-olds, basically, because if you keep targeting the older people, they're just going to keep getting older, and then they're going to die, and then you've lost your consumers, haven't you? So we've now switched it round, and I mean, there's been a lot of talk, and farmers get, and I'm not any different, but farmers get quite triggered by vegan this and vegan that, and there's been a lot of sort of talk of that. I don't think it's anything to worry about, having spoken to people all around the place. And if people are vegan, that's absolutely their choice, and I respect them for it, because I couldn't go without eating meat. And if that's what they want to do, then that's absolutely fine. But an awful lot of people are being made to feel a bit guilty about eating meat because of all the climate stuff, about all the animal, all these things that they're seeing. Oh, maybe I shouldn't be eating meat. Maybe it's the wrong thing to do. Maybe it's bad for my health. And I think actually at the bottom of it, most of us want to eat meat. Most of us really enjoy it. They like the taste. We like the taste. It's a real. We've grown up with it. It's the Sunday roast, the turkey at Christmas, the lamb at Easter, whatever. They're all sort of real anchors in our lives. It's really, really important to most of us, and most people really enjoy the taste of it, but they've been feeling a bit guilty because they're getting all this negative press. So basically our job is to say, look, you don't need to feel guilty, because look, you buy Scotch, you buy local, so you don't really need to worry about the environment because it's sustainable. We've got all this grass, we've got all this rain, you know, we've got a lower carbon footprint. You don't need to worry about that. So you know, forget that guilt. You don't need to worry about the animal welfare because all these animals are getting checked. We're doing quality assurance. We know that they're being looked after properly. So you don't need to worry about that. And right enough, some people, they don't want to eat animals because they don't want to have, you know, they don't think they should be killed for food, and that's totally fine. That's their choice. But if you're assured that they've been looked after their whole life, then that's fine. And if you're worried about it's bad for your health, you know, well, look, as long as you eat it as part of a healthy, balanced diet, you know, don't eat it all the time. Nobody's going to eat meat all the time, 24 hours a day. But if you eat it as part of a healthy, balanced diet, then it's not bad for you. It's good for you. It's really, really nutrient dense. It's got all these vitamins, minerals, and all the things that we need. And we're built to eat meat. So I suppose our job and field cred is to try and get that across to people. You don't need to feel guilty. As long as you choose the right meat, then, you know, go ahead and enjoy it, because it's good for you, it's good for the environment, it's good for Scotland, it's good for, you know, the rural economy. You can go as far as you want. It's good for biodiversity to have cattle out in the hills and in the fields, and, you know, all these things. And if we can just reassure them, then they don't need to feel guilty, and everybody's happy. So that's really what's at the sort of basis of the field cred ad, and it's basically it's worded in such a way to try and hit a younger target market as well. You know, most of the 50-plus-year-old farmers go, "What's cred then?" You know.
How much credit am I getting? Yeah, for sure. It's quite an interesting one listening to you sort of go over the reasons. I've always said that I'm only aware of 4 reasons why I wouldn't eat meat. Choice, just literally don't want to. Sound. Medical, I'm 20 stone, not the person to tell you anything about health. Welfare, I don't think an animal should be exploited or killed for our gain. Totally get it. What I always say to that one is, and it's a big question this, and it takes people a while to answer this, is death a harm? Viewers, comment, let me know if you think it is. I think it's a great question. It really sort of debunks that whole thing. And then environmentally, yes, if you live in, God, Ukraine, let's forget what's happening in Ukraine. If you live in Ukraine, if you live in Argentina, if you live in the States, yes, it's probably better to have crop-based diets, because they're the baskets of these places and all of their sort of beef and lamb productions in very intensive systems. But ours are reared on the hill. There's the big thing, a kilo of beef requires 13,000 litres of water, whereas a kilo of rice requires 4,000. That's true, but I believe 97% of the water that's in Scottish, basically that's been ingested with Scottish cattle and sheep is just circular. Yeah, you're reducing sequestration because they're on the hill, you're not ploughing for them. There's so many things. It's a big discussion. I like the sort of the looking at it from you don't have to feel bad, which you shouldn't, you know.
No.
Okay, I get the thing. If you're saying you're killing an animal for it, fair, I get the reason why you might have to feel bad. But my opinion on that, I guess, I can't say that that's wrong, but my opinion on that is that shouldn't be the case. It's an interesting look at it.
And as a vet, we had the conversation earlier about, you know, you should know when to let your dog go. And if you're, you know, what's the difference between putting a pet down and you know, and having as long as they've had a good life, is there any difference? We're still doing it, you know. We're still making that decision for that animal. We're not letting it die itself. And, you know, so you say that you say that to people, you know, if you don't want animals killed for food, is it okay to put your dog down if it's in pain?
Yeah, absolutely. And that totally is a thing. Now, I guess the argument there, which does make sense, is when you're looking at the sort of putting down of a pet, it's probably at that stage where life is ending. When you're looking, I guess, at lambs, you know, steers, whatever, it's probably earlier than their peak life, which is probably what the argument is there, which makes sense. But also, we've
but the animal doesn't know.
Exactly. Yeah, they don't know. really looking forward to retirement,
yeah. And as long as you've done it, as long as you've done it in the nice, in the best possible way. And actually, there's actually a really strong argument for taking people into abattoirs and letting them see what happens, because it is so respectful. People have these, when you don't know what happens, you have all these images in your head. And once you've actually seen it, it's done in such a respectful, quiet way, because that's the way, that's what's best for the animals, it's best for the people, it's best for the meat. It's all done. It's not like these videos that you see on on social media, which are in other countries, and it's not like that at all. It's there are some I think there are some abattoirs in Europe where they do invite the members of the public in and have a viewing gallery, so they can actually reassure themselves about how it's done. It's not something that most people want to see. Most farmers don't want to see it, but I can assure anybody that it's absolutely respectfully done, and it's the animals are not in any way stressed, and they don't know what's coming. They're not frightened. They're not stressed. Is it any different from putting your old dog down? The animal doesn't know any different.
Completely agree, and I'll hold my hands up if any of my students are listening. They know, because everyone's told them. I fainted when I went to an abattoir. Not good with stuff like that. Knew I wasn't, but really wanted to see it, and saw it long enough to see that respect you're talking about, which I think, I'm in the industry, I'm from a farm, always have been. I thought I knew it was there, but I didn't. There was no way of me knowing until I saw it firsthand. Now, I only got 90 seconds to see it, so leave it squeamish. It takes a lot less than that for me to. It can be the sight of a needle and I'm down. That is not something to sort of judge the quality of it. But
you would be much good help with the cow cesarean then. I've quite frequently had the farmer and usually wife helping with a cow cesarean, and halfway through the farmer will keel over. Never ever had a woman keel over.
Oh, definitely the case, 100%. Never seen a squeamish woman, but me. I mean, I'm being deadly serious when I say I'll have a minor faint maybe 2 or 3 times a year. I'm not good with stuff. I have helped with a yow cesarean before, but maybe just left it to the ladies a bit. Yeah,
I'm not very good with people's blood, mind. I get a wee bit squeamish with people's blood. So
yeah. No, I'm not made for these situations, so that's why I'm not in them. No, listen, Kate, it's been great to sort of chat and go over what's a extensive career in the industry, sort of touching all bases. There's 2 questions we end every single episode with, however. First off, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And second off, and this could be a massive question for you because there's about 75 careers you've had. If you had any tips for folk coming into the industry, farming, marketing, veterinary, what would they be?
Oh goodness, tips for people coming into the industry. I think you've got to have the passion. You've got to love what you do. I mean, none of us are doing this because we're going to make a fortune. But it's about far more than money, isn't it? It's about lifestyle, and it's about being your own boss, and it's about being out on the farm. And I don't know a farmer out there that doesn't absolutely love their farm. After my husband and kids, I love the farm more than I love anything else, and it's not even mine. We're tenants, but I just love it. And where all the birds are. I was out the other day, and the oyster catchers are back in one of the fields, and they'll be the same ones that were there last year. And you sort of, oh, hiya, you're back again, and where the oak trees are, and you just know it. It's just part of you. It's absolutely, and you've got to feel that, I think. And I don't think anybody should feel that it's their duty to do it or feel forced to do it or anything like that. I think you've got to have that passion and just have the confidence to try new things. You've got to. Somebody said to me, just take every single opportunity that comes along, because you're never going to look back when you're in your 80s and think, well, I wish I hadn't taken that opportunity. You're only ever going to look back and say, I wish I had taken that opportunity. So just take every opportunity that comes along and get advice of as many people as possible, but don't don't feel that you have to follow it. Do your own thing, but just listen to people around you, because there's so much knowledge out there. I think probably getting a mentor or something is a good idea, and not to tell you what to do, but just to help you sort of bounce ideas about and things. And none of that's very practical. And I know getting into farming is really difficult, and it's really capital intense, and not everybody can do it. And I know all that stuff. But if you've got that passion, then go for it. And there's so many opportunities in this industry at the minute. Everywhere I go, people are looking for staff. Everywhere. Yeah. In every part of it, on farms, in the red meat sector, in feed companies, SAC are looking for consultants all the time. There's opportunities everywhere at the minute. So if it is your passion, then absolutely go for it, because there's something out there for you.
Yeah, and I think you made a good point there, Kate. I mean, the idea of getting into farming, I've spoke about it. I'm in an extremely lucky position where there's an owned farm behind my family, and I'm not even on it, and I'm in the industry, and that's helped me. And I'm not trying to say that was difficult for me at all. I was lucky. But owning a farm is not the only way you can work in this industry. Like you say, it's massive, service sector, everything, Yeah. Good stuff. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
5 years. So I've got a big birthday this year. So in 5 years, it's going to be another big birthday. What we've said to the lads.
I'll be 30. Everyone listening.
I'm not going to be 60, by the way, this year, just so that you know.
That's definitely not the number I was thinking.
What we've said to the lads is, look, so they're 18, the twins who might or might not be interested are 18, and we've said, look, we've got another 10 years here. In 10 years' time, we're going to be looking to wind down. So you've got 10 years to decide if this is for you or not. Go off and do your thing. Come back if you want to. If you don't want to come back, absolutely fine. My dad always said, when I'm 65, I'm retiring. It doesn't matter whether you want to come back or not. That's what's happening. I'm not going to linger on for ages. And so we've said we've got about 10 years or so. Ed's a little bit older than me. So go out and do what you want and come back. So I would hope in 5 years' time, we would probably have an indication of whether that was going to be them or not. And I suppose that would affect what you did, because if you had an indication in 5 years' time that they were interested, you'd be trying to probably build things up for them. If you knew that they weren't interested, what I would really like to do is try to help somebody else get in. There are a lot of younger people about, and particularly women, who would find it even harder to get in than your average bloke, I would think. I've got a niece who's hasn't grown up on a farm, but it really loves farming. So maybe if the kids didn't want to, we could see about her. Just try and help somebody else get in and help them through their first few years, and see how you could sort of hand things on a bit or pass things over a bit. So I would hope that that's where we were with the farm. In 5 years' time, I'll be long gone from QMS. I'll be a has-been there, because you have a very set term, because it's a public appointment. You have a set term, so there's no way I'm going to still be there in 5 years. But that's
actually probably, just sorry to interrupt you there, Kate. That's probably important to say. We never actually said what your position in QMS was.
Well, yeah, we didn't.
So you're not staff per se.
No. Yeah. I'm the chair of the board of QMS. I was on the board first as a board member, and now I'm the chair. And because we're a non-departmental public body. That's how we collect the levy. So we're kind of part of government a little bit. So I'm actually appointed by the cabinet secretary. That's who not my boss, because I don't answer to her, but she's the one who appointed me. And with public appointments, you have a very limited time. So you have a maximum of 8 years in that position, which is absolutely quite right, because you need turnover in these organisations or else they get stale. So it'll be a maximum of 8 years, and I've done 3.5 now. So in 5 years' time, I'll definitely not be there. I might not be there in 6 months' time if the cabinet secretary doesn't want me there, but I certainly won't be there in 5 years' time. But I really enjoy. I just really enjoy being able to influence and make a difference and hopefully help the industry. So I really like doing that sort of thing. I'm on one or two other things. I'm on the Trade and Agriculture Commission. I'm sitting on the ARIO board, which is looking at future policy. I really quite enjoy all that sort of thing. I was on the South of Scotland Enterprise Agency board as well, up until last month. I've only done a little time on that. It might be something I would like to go back to. I like doing that sort of thing. I like the strategy and the planning, and they're just trying to make a difference bit of it. So I would really like to still be involved in some way in that, but that's down to other people really coming and asking you if they might all think, oh well, you've not done any good, we don't want you. So I would like to be doing that, and I'll still be helping the People Show, and I hopefully won't be still chairing the Discussion Society, because I'll try and find somebody else that I can pan that off onto.
Hopefully won't be chairing the Discussion Society, because she might have to sit next to me at a dining table for an hour one day.
It was brilliant.
No, I'm sure you're playing yourself down on the fact that they won't want you. I can't see that being the case. Just one question on the tenancy. You're saying you get 10 years left. Is that purely down to age, that tenancy is there for longer than 10 years? Or
yeah, it's a 1991 Act tenancy, so it's 3 generations. And although we've been on the estate for 5 generations, my dad was the first one on this farm, so right. we've got that there. It's a secure tenancy, and if the kids want it, it's there for them. It's an age thing. I don't intend me or Ed to be in our 70s having to work every hour God sends. It's not a job for people in their late 60s and 70s. It should be the younger ones who are taking it forward and having the opportunity. So, and
I think that's a really progressive outlook as well, because there's quite a lot that do work until the day they die. And that's another missed opportunity. You mentioned opportunities a few times throughout the chat there. That's a lot of missed opportunities for, up and coming youngsters.
And I mean, you can absolutely understand that. The bit we sometimes fail with that is the emotional attachment that farmers have to the farms. Yeah. Absolutely. People don't want to leave the house that they've lived in all their life. And if I ever have nightmares, it's actually about leaving the farm. I sometimes have nightmares. It's either about my finals at vet school or leaving the farm. It's not, it's not what you want to do. So it won't be easy, but I think it's our duty really to help the next generation.
No, good stuff. Listen, it's been great to chat. I don't know if you've got anything else you'd like to say, or no.
No, I don't think so. I've probably poured out far too much of my life story than anybody's interested in.
Not at all. That's exactly what these are all about. And well, it is actually after 10. We've been chatting for a while. It's been great. Really enjoyed.
Have to cut some of this.
No, not at all. I don't cut anything out. Never do. I think it's great to show the sort of true story. I've always liked to do this as if you're just sat at the pub having a chat. The only rubbish thing is there's no porn star martinis on Zoom. But it's been great to have a chat. If you speak again, Kate.
Got my gin.
Which I have barely had a drink of the whole night. I don't know, that's a mistake.
No, I've not drunk it. It's sitting waiting as a reward when I get finished.
That's what people have to do when they've just spoke to me for an hour and a half. No, for those of you listening, guys, hope you've enjoyed, as always, another really interesting guest, which I hate saying. I say it every time. I'm like, don't say it's been an interesting guest. I wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't. I say this often. Nobody wants to sit and listen to me on their own for an hour. If you follow consistently, I hope you're enjoying the podcast as we go. If you're new here, if Kate has brought you over and you've never came across the R2Kast, please stick around. Follow us on Rowell to Kitchen at Rowell Kitchen on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Or if you listen to your podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, follow there. For what QMS are doing, follow Quality Meat Scotland on Facebook, and then Quality Meat Scotland and Make It Scotch on Instagram. They're doing a lot of good stuff over there. You will unfortunately see my face at some point as well. On top of that, for the next few episodes coming up next week, we've been promoting Scotch products here. Probably the man promoting Welsh products is Gareth Wynne Jones. We've got him next week. The following week, we've got another person based in Wales, Emma Victoria Hulton, who is a previous British Farming Award winner, I believe second in the vegetable section, new entrant vegetable section, Princess Cabbage on Instagram, which I think is a great name. And then the one in 3 weeks is with arguably the world's most famous farmer, Joel Salatin. So from the States, his family have sort of spearheaded the organic and regenerative movement all since the 60s. So yeah, really interesting story there as well. And at the minute, that's all I'm filmed up to. So I don't know what number 44 is, but that takes us up to 43. So thank you again for listening, Kate. It's been a pleasure. Really enjoyed having you on.
Thank you very much. And I'm feeling really outclassed now with all those people.
No, don't be daft. Don't be daft. But hear so many great stories from so many different sides of the industry. It's been a pleasure doing it myself. And we shall see you all next week.
Well, that's it. Another R2Kast finished. Another agricultural mind opened up. And I would just like to say that getting these guests on board does take time, and it always has done. But I've now went weekly, and with that comes even more time required. And I would just like to finally thank once more the Scottish Farmer for sponsoring the show and making that much more possible. Please be sure to get in touch if you've any ideas of people you'd like to see on the podcast, or maybe ideas you have for me presenting better, because I definitely do require that. See you in the next one.